trying to tell you as much as I can.
It won't stay by the time I get back, so I'll be behind the gate. Which means you have a story.
And they already had this land, and they already had the old building, all they did was the library. Thank you.
Right.
Yellow jacket, so like, you know, your high disability, you can't be up to no good. They won't come in. Oh, okay, yeah, you wanted to come, they're gonna have you, because. Like, kind of, just for you. So I'm not worried about it. Just kind of, really just on your desk, and he went into work belt. That's why I got home like last night, I was showing him what the lounge. Oh, okay. Oh, good, then he'll be all sort of ready for that. Yeah, I mentioned it, yeah. Hey.
I think we need to update our clock again, but has to happen every once in a while. It is 3:01, so I'm calling our Town of Gibsons Committee of the Whole meeting to order of November 21st, 2023, and we're honored to gather on the traditional territories of the Skokomish Nation. First, we need to approve the agenda. Moved by Councillor Kroll, seconded by Councillor D'Andrade. All those in favor? The motion carries. And the first item on our agenda is a delegation from the Gibsons Curling Club. So welcome Ed Hill and Denise Henshaw. You're welcome to come up to the podium here. And go ahead.
Thank you, Worship, and councillors. I'm Ed Hill, and I'm here actually representing the Gibsons Curling Club. With me is Denise Henshaw, the treasurer for the Gibsons Curling Club, and she'll be able to answer some of your more technical financial issues that we're going to get into, I hope. And we've given you a handout that basically fleshes out what I'm going to use as introduction. Because I understand we're limited to about 10 minutes, and I don't want to take it all up on what you've got in front of you. I'll summarize why we're here in the first instance by saying that it's shock and surprise at the club level that all of a sudden BC Tax Assessment decided that within this fiscal year, our little club has to pay $19,000 in cash. And some of that tax money, of course, goes towards recreation. And so one of our executive members pointed out, and I'm going to quote her as saying, the irony of a self-funded, volunteer-run recreation facility now being asked to pay taxes to support other recreation facilities on the Sunshine Coast sounds a little bit strange, particularly when we're the ones that are expected to put $19,000 out. For some of you who are not on the Sunshine Coast for as long as others, a little bit of history that the Gibsons Curling Club was incorporated on November 22nd, 1973. Tomorrow, we are a half a century old. And all of a sudden, we've got a $19,000 bill. Boom, you got to be paying that. All those years ago, where the Gibsons Curling Club is now, was Crown land. And with the efforts of town council and members of a new initiative, which was to be the Gibsons Curling Club, approached the province, and that land became the property of the town of Gibsons. And ultimately, that land was leased to us, the Gibsons Curling Club. And the building was that building was then built and funded by the members of the Gibsons Curling Club, which isn't a huge number of people. With debentures, member loans, community donations, and I highlight and say a word that you're going to hear time and again through my presentation, volunteerism. No big bucks, just blood, sweat, and tears of volunteerism at its highest level in our community, and it continues to this day. Currently, we're a membership of 160 people keeping that big building going and alive. And an awful lot of it is done with that volunteerism. And if we need money, we raise it ourselves. We provide for your community, for our community, not just a curling rink. We provide recreation for a wide range of ages and social profile in our community. It's huge in terms of who we see in our curling club and how often they're there. We provide a vital life heartbeat of energy for the Special Olympics community. Come on up on a Saturday morning and see the smiles and laughter of those young people and some older from the Special Olympics, seniors and school programs. And I see a nod from our youth representative. Have you curled there? There you go. So we provide for the community. Plus, we are a facility that allows for meetings of various sizes, whether it be in the summer when it's a flat surface or upstairs all through the year. We have so few of those. We provide that as a community service. And we use it as a fundraiser to put a new roof on, to put a kitchen in that we're allowed to cook in, to take care of cracks in the building and the ice. That's all done with money we raise and volunteerism. We give, we have one paid position, that of an ice maker. That's necessary. It isn't just frozen water. It's a technician that does it. But other than that, nothing is paid for in terms of another person in that building putting money in their pocket. We do this by supporting the community, whether it be putting food on the table for a bonspiel or anything we need is bought locally. And it's local service people that work there and take care of the repair and maintenance and lounge and so on. That's all done through our membership fund. And our membership is done basically at the same level as any curling club in the province. And it's not a cheap sport to play when you think of the number of dollars that folks spend. They're paying to their limit. And a lot of our people especially now in these times, are backing off even joining the club because the extra $20 we've had to ask this year, they can't afford. So we are at our limit. So our problem is, and I ask that we kind of make this precise and concise as we present it to you. We've been assessed a tax bill of over $9,000 by BC Tax Assessment. The tax notice was a complete surprise with virtually little or no time to appeal or inquire. Both the 23 and 24 taxations fall within the current fiscal year. That's where we get $19,000 surprise for a volunteer club that's just living like that financially to keep going and properly. In effect, we have $19,000 to pay, and we need help. Neither our budget nor our accounts allow for that surprise. We are on the edge with this surprise. And I'm going to quote here because our treasurer insisted that these words be done properly, and she'll be able to elaborate. Our most pressing need is the 2023 property tax amount of $9,400. This includes the 5% penalty levied by the town for late payment. We've not yet received the property tax bill for 2024, but our estimated need for that is $9,600. Gibsons Curling Club, we're presently approaching BC assessment. We're going to see how much luck we have, and we don't anticipate a lot in appealing, come on, take a look or whatever. We're doing that. We're doing our part as best we can. But in short, why are we here? We need your help. We need your help. If this continues the way it is, we don't know how we can do it. So how can you help? Well, let's look at all the options. Forgive or recoup the town's portion of the taxation. 1/3 of that, we understand, goes to the town. $3,000, round number as I understand it. We're asking to consider recouping us that, soften the blow for us. And the other ask is that we understand that regional district likewise has $3,000 of that $9,000 that's theirs. Conceivably, some of that going towards recreation. It seems counterintuitive, and so we're saying, can we get your support, your assistance, your guidance in approaching the regional district for the like consideration? Come on, guys, how about that $3,000 back at least so we can keep sliding rocks up and down in frozen water? We are a club. We are a group of volunteers. We are your community members, very much close to the edge. And I'm not exaggerating, I'm stating a reality. And so that's our opening presentation. I know you're going to have money questions, technical questions, questions that the executive would have discussed. And I turn that over now to our treasurer, Denise. Yeah, I want to get in so they can hear you on the mic.
Yeah, could I just want to clarify that the 2023 tax bill is due now. It's overdue, November 6th, I believe, right? And so when Ed mentions $3,100, that would be what we saw as the town's portion plus the penalty. So it would be $3,100 plus the penalty, correct? And so there would be another amount for the 2024 bill, which we are estimating is going to be approximately the same. We don't know yet. So yeah. Any questions around that?
Questions on the numbers? Thank you. I have a question, just a number of participants, because I didn't see here. I know there's 160 members, but how many people come to play, including students and?
Well, if we included, we haven't included Special Olympics, let's say that would be another 20 to 25. The students that come, their PE classes, I think they're in the range of 30, 35 people a class. I don't know, maybe Kale can say more accurately, but yeah, we have, if we included all those, I just have to guess, but right now we have 160 members. I would say 300 maybe. It's a guess. But also, there's all the rentals, the people that we have meetings in our building, probably be upwards of that. Yeah.
Councillor Thompson.
Hi.
Hi. Huge fan of curling, and my mother was a member at the curling club while she lived in Gibsons, and yeah, it's provides a great aspect to our community, so thank you for that. When we take these things into consideration, we have financials that we normally have the opportunity to view, and I'm wondering when we might be able to see those.
Oh, yes, thanks for asking. I was told that you would ask for those and we could present them later. So, and we're prepared to do that. Our year end, our fiscal year end ends September 30th. We are in the process right now of compiling the 2022 financial statement up to September 23, sorry, yeah, from 22 to 23. So they should be ready within the week. Yeah, if that's what you'd like, we can certainly have them delivered.
Thank you.
Questions? Yeah, Councillor Lumley.
Yeah, through the mayor. I mean, obviously, the penalty is another added expense that obviously through the presentation you can ill afford either. My question is just, if you're here now, but the taxes were due and the penalty's been assessed, maybe I'm asking, why didn't you come before the penalty? Or like...
Well, it's timing. Everything has, the biggest issue here is timing. Like we didn't receive notice of the supplementary tax assessment till the end of September. So then we met with the Town staff and tried to get a clearer idea of why that happened. This is the first available time that we could come, in short.
Yeah, we have not known about this for very long either. I know our staff expressed the same kind of shock when we learned about it at the town. And personally, I just find it deplorable the way BC Assessment does this, especially to a nonprofit in this way. We're all kind of between this rock and a hard place now because of their procedures.
Right.
At the very least, I think we need to suggest to them that they need to do things differently. It's just, I don't know how they can expect this of anyone, let alone nonprofits. Councillor Lumley.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I wondered if maybe the curling, if you've looked into, or maybe a corporate officer might have an answer as to whether or not it can be appealed, any of these things, the tax itself and the penalty. Is there a right to appeal this?
I did hear Mr. Hill mention that. I don't know if who's...
We have contacted once, after initially getting the notice, our club president reached out to the assessment authority, and their response to him was, you have to deal with the town. Now, because the town is the tax assessor. Yeah. In the meantime, well, I'm glad you asked, because within the last 6-7 days, actually, I've been trying to reach them, and 3 times I've phoned over the last week and gotten the same answer, that their mandate is to return the call within 2 business days. So I haven't had an opportunity. So if that was part of Ed's, part of his appeal was if there's any way that you can help us with that. Because, you probably have more clout getting through than we do. Because we don't, so far, haven't been able to speak with them.
Director of Finance.
From the appeal perspective, the notice that the town received and the curling club also received in late September, top right corner has an appeal deadline of July 31st, 2024. So there is a process to go through. So, and then if the club was successful in either getting their taxation status either not taxable or the assessed value reduced or the class change, then what happens is BC Assessment sends us another supplementary notice, and then we adjust taxes on that, and then send a revision out from there. And if it wasn't, the club had paid, and it overpaid, then we refund it and basically undo all that for any portion that was overcharged based on the appeal. But they have until January 31st, 2024.
January or July?
January 31st, 2024.
Okay. Councillor DeAndrade.
Thank you, Mayor. Just if I can better understand the 5%, is it 5% a year and every day compounds? Or is it just a 5%?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. It's based on our bylaw, the town's bylaw, and our tax bylaw, tax rate bylaw structure for penalties. It used to be 10% the day after the due date. During COVID, council changed, at the time changed it to 5 and 5. So 5% comes when the tax due date is, when we get our normal tax process, the tax due date is around July 4th. The tax penalty would have been July 5th. And when we get a supplemental, I take the timing of when the tax notices go out and the penalty applies and basically shift it. And so the 5% has been applied, the first 5% has been applied right now. End of the year, the second 5% gets applied, and that's based on bylaw. And the timing for BC Assessment and theirs is based on their legislation, so.
Yeah, so the penalty is automatic. It's not something we have any discretion over. Staff certainly doesn't have discretion over, but it's something we could, considering the circumstances, definitely consider. Councillor DeAndrade.
I think, I don't know if I fully understand. I understand that it's 5% on the next day, but so is this, if let's say it takes a year for the payment, the 5% still applies, or there's a compounding thing with?
Right. So the way the taxes work is the penalty. So by legislation, we're required to apply a 10% penalty total, and right? And then this council, and some councils, they split it. This council previously did 5 and 5. It's a one-time penalty. There's no additional charges between now and the end of the year. The way tax legislation works is once you roll over to January 1st, current year taxes become arrears taxes, and then interest starts to be charged.
Thank you, Mayor White. I'm just wondering, you know, aside from appealing, are there other sort of things you've looked at with respect to alternate fundraising you might be able to come up with? I did have the opportunity of meeting with you and a couple of the other members of your board prior to this, and certainly understand the predicament you're in, but at that time we discussed, you know, other things that you might consider for funding, and I'm just wondering, have any of those been pursued?
We are in the process, we're always looking at fundraising opportunities, like constantly. That's how we keep our doors open. This, yes, we're still doing that. It takes time, as you know, to apply for grants. Also, it's a difficult proposal to pay taxes to apply for grants, so it's not usually looked upon kindly. But we continue our efforts, yes.
Okay, thank you for the delegation and the presentation. It is, as I explained to every delegation, it is a policy of council not to respond immediately to delegations at our meetings. It's a policy we have to follow, and but we will be discussing this further, and we'll be in touch for sure. And I want to say I really appreciate our staff too for
Yes, we do.
all the communications and troubleshooting that they've been putting into this problem.
Thank you for your time.
Did you establish how to submit the financials to them?
We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's it.
Okay, our next item is item 4.1, which is a report from our Director of Finance on accessory dwellings utility charges. Are we good to go? Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Yeah, so this one is, I'm bringing this to council in the context of the housing strategy and specifically goal number 2, which is investing in incentivizing priority unit types. And the timing of this is ahead of the 2024 budget discussions. And that way, any direction that council may want to provide can be incorporated into the rate analysis that I present, or that's presented in late January with the water and sewer and the utility rates. And so we have 3 types of utility charges, water, garbage, and sanitary sewer. As you can see, the water has a volumetric charge, and it's quite well aligned with the automatic use that's captured with accessory dwellings, or any additional use. The other 2 have fixed charges, and there's not a direct link with that, and of ways to capture additional use, and in that, because of that, it might create a bit of a disincentive for people who want to create accessory dwellings. And so that's why I'm bringing this report to you today, just to give you some information to ponder over. So from a rate structure point of view, the best way to address this is to have a structure that's more closely aligned with use and the fee. And as mentioned, the water rate structure is set up that way. Garbage and organics is not yet. And so I'll start with organics first. And this one, it could be adjusted to apply to just a 1 charge per residential property. Right now, we apply a flat rate per unit on the property. And so the rate structure could be adjusted where there's a minimum charge per property. And then owners that require more than 1 garbage can for the property could either buy additional garbage tags, which some owners do right now anyway, or if they have a long-term situation, we have renters or owners who live off coast and have renters, and they don't want to be dealing with garbage tags. We could have it where we apply a long-term charge to the utility account on a long-term basis. So basically another charge on a long-term basis, and that mimics getting garbage tags every week. And so that one's a pretty straightforward solution. And an example, so I ran some numbers thinking, okay, what if we did this rate structure last year? What would that look like? And so based on assuming that we went to a 1 charge per property and there was no additional service purchased, and so all the charges would be removed from accessory dwellings, the increase per year per property would be roughly about $25 per year. And so basically what that does is that raises up the base rate for all garbage collection, and that way we collect the same revenue because we're providing the same service, but it's potentially more fair across the board. And this one, so if that was done, the base rate would have been brought up, and then any additional charges that apply from a service point of view, so say that our contractor has increased inflationary costs they have to pass on to us, that would be applied to a new base rate. So it would apply across the board. So this shift would be a separate increase from any inflationary increases. And then we would adjust the tag cost as well, because that's aligned with the cost of service. And so for sanitary sewer, this one, the long-term solution is to build similar like we do water, and so basically have a flat portion and then a volumetric portion. And for sanitary sewer, that's usually based on winter water use, because in the winter you're not watering gardens, so all the water use you're using is going down your drain and into our sewer system. That's a long-term rate that's structure that's been on my radar for quite some time, and we haven't been able to get to it yet for a variety of reasons. and that's still a ways out, so that's a long-term solution that can address this problem. In the short term, given the incredibly challenging housing challenges that we all have, basically everywhere, I wanted to provide another option as well. And so you could look at basically similar to garbage, but dropping the sanitary sewer rate, so it's one minimum charge per property. In this case, we don't have a solution where we could charge additional per suite because we don't have a way to measure that. Like with a garbage can, you need a garbage can. And so this one would be basically just dropping the additional charges. It would be one rate per residential property, regardless of how many units are on there. And if I ran the numbers for that, and if that happened in 2023, it would have been an additional $36 per property for residential. And that again would have been separate from any other increases, so separate from the 5% increase that the long-term financial plan for sewer envisions. It would have been a one-time $36 bump, then the 5% would have applied to that, and then basically at a new level. And then it just basically takes away the number of units and potentially takes away that disincentive. I did include some pros and cons for that in the report, just for you, a bit of information for you. If council would like to proceed at this, for either of these, what we would be doing is doing some, I'd be building that into the rate structure, bring it back, for the sewer, it'd be into the long-term financial plan. For the garbage, it would be in the garbage rate analysis, and then that's brought forward in January. Bylaws would have to be updated as well, which isn't too big of a deal, just have to be timing. And then from a garbage point of view, we'd need to do a fair bit of communication to make sure that we're not missing some service to maintain the service that's there. But we sort of we looked ahead and thought we could do that as well in the timing if council made that decision. So that's the report for you. Here for questions.
Thank you for preparing this and getting it to us in such a timely manner. I'll look to council for questions. First, Councillor DeAndretti.
Mayor, I don't have a question. I had just a point of view.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions first? I guess I'll just directly on the report before we talk about it. Okay, go ahead.
I guess my question would be why wouldn't we just have a set fee for every ancillary building or garden suite as part of their tax structure for both residential units? If there's two residential units on the property, why wouldn't we have like just a dedicated fee instead of maybe the primary residential unit being assessed the tax or some sort of increase in tax for the ancillary building? I guess that's my question. Does that make sense?
Not to me, but looks like.
I can clarify. So
Good.
this is specific to utility charges. And so any improvements that a property would make, so say they have an auxiliary building like a garden suite, that is captured in the taxes automatically because BC Assessment will pick that up from a value point of view. So those are captured in the tax notice that they get. This is specifically the utility user charges that we apply on a flat rate basis. And it's hard to match up where the taxes, it catches the value and it's in line with every other. It's a more fair approach. This one, it's because they're flat, it's hard to match the additional use, if that helps answer the question.
So these are flat, right? The status quo is flat charges per suite. I had a really basic question too. In these calculations, we must have needed to determine how many suites or accessory dwellings we're currently charging to make these. And is that number in the report anywhere, or did I miss that?
It's not, and I'm trying to remember what the number is, but I could work backwards. But no, I looked at our last September utility billing. Here's all the additional charges we had. Here's the revenue created. And here's that was the bump. So, sorry, I'm the top of my
I'm
head.
very curious what that number is. Even for other reasons. Even though also recognizing too, it doesn't necessarily capture all the suites that are out there. There's probably a lot that aren't.
That's right.
Yeah, Councillor Thompson.
You just covered the point I was going to ask, which is capturing the suites that we aren't aware of that are out there. So, yeah, to your point.
And through you, Mr. Mayor, the numbers I crunched are based on the collections basically the suites we know that were out there and are collecting. So I don't know the ones that we aren't, basically.
Which I think largely have been determined over the years by people just asking for extra garbage in particular, right? I mean, I think that's my understanding over the years is that's how we usually find out if someone has an extra suite is maybe they're asking for extra garbage service. So then when they do that, they end up having to pay the extra sewer as well, where meanwhile, there could be other suites and accessory buildings out there that aren't asking for that and aren't paying the extra charges. I mean, I think we're all pretty sure there is. So it's an interesting situation. Councillor Kroll.
I just wanted to thank you for the report, and I think, it does, as you pointed out, the value of even the home value through BC assessment, if there is a suite that has been assessed, is captured in the taxation. So, I think the request for this report came out of what can we do to incentivize people to get into long-term rental. And I think, you've provided some really useful information here, and it's really appreciated. So thank you.
I'll just ask another question too. I think it might relate to what Councillor Lumley was asking about before. Could you clarify what the situation is for like multifamily? I mean, when we're talking about the number of units on a property, we're not talking about a property with 8 townhouses on it because they have to do a different method, I think.
That's right,
Yeah,
yes.
so
So those multifamilies are strata, and strata are basically charged similar to a single-family dwelling. So they get taxed separately, they're their own separate parcel, and they each get applied in this case, a garbage flat fee and then a sewer flat fee. We provide this garbage service slightly different because they're multifamily buildings, but they basically each pay similar to a single-family residence. And so this is really only secondary suite, accessory dwellings, secondary suite in a house or a garden suite, or what I'm told is a lock-off suite, which is a suite in a multifamily, I believe. So this is really our accessory dwellings, not stratas. Stratas are like single-family.
They have to do private collection, I believe, right? No?
No, sorry, Mr. Mayor, no, we do, the town provides that service, and they do have, we deliver it differently. The contractor, basically, instead of having a curbside garbage can, most places, they have a central collection, and our contractor goes in and they have carts. It's only commercial that do their own. We don't provide commercial garbage, but for residential multifamily stratas, we do. Yeah, and commercial would be similar to, say, an apartment building that's owned by a company. They deal with their own garbage.
Okay, yeah, so apartment buildings that are like rentals. Yeah, that'd be a commercial, right? Okay, thanks. Now, I think you are looking for some direction or interest from us in integrating this into the utility rate work that you're doing?
If council is interested in directing staff that way, sooner is better. Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
So any thoughts on that? Councillor D'Andrade.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm concerned with this approach because when I did some rough calculations, I believe it's going to increase about $100 per household because you have the $60 plus the 5% that utility bills increase every year. In the last year, our utility bills has doubled. In the past decade, over 100%. So this would increase another $100 this year. Next year will be another $110. And I think this puts a burden on residents. And I don't think it's even provides social equity, because to assume that people who are in a pension, for example, half of our populations are seniors, that they would be able to have this increased tax to facilitate affordable housing. I don't think it's fair. And then you also have the situation when you have lots that are bigger than others. They can have 2 secondary suites, so they would have this benefit, and other people have only one secondary suite, and other people don't even have secondary suites. So I think I am to support affordability. And the Director of Finance, she proposed the approach, which is to look at the sanitary sewer to include a volumetric component for every unit. So that's fair, it's the same, it's pay by use, right? And with the garbage and organic rate, what I've seen, some municipalities, they charge 50%, because people are still gonna use. And the trucks, they're gonna charge by volume, so the volume will be there regardless. So I think I'm more interested in seeing, and I understand from the Director of Finance report that this will be a more long approach, because obviously there will be some work that has to be done. But I think if council wants to support, it should do this work, because otherwise we will relieve secondary suites from this utility tax for a few years, and then we will do the work, or then we will be penalizing the residents. So I don't think, especially considering that our our property taxes will have increases as well. So this year, a regular residents would expect another $300 or $400 in increased taxes. So I don't think this is total. I'm not talking, utility will be $100 about an increase in the next year in taxes. So
We have no idea we're way too far early in the process to
No,
be
it's
able to
not. You are-
speculate what our tax increase
No,
is
Mayor,
going to be
you add,
overall.
the Director of Finance provided the figures. It's going to be about $60 increase per resident, plus we have 5%
Yeah.
on utility bill. And if you do the math, you'll be at least $100.
Okay, but I don't see the $300 or $400 there.
No, in property taxes, that will be another, whether 200
know.
more. Well, policing costs will be another added, and we have inflation. So what I'm saying is, every resident would anticipate increase in taxes, and we have huge inflation coming. I don't think it's fair to solve one problem to create a burden on residents that are in
Well,
fixing.
what we're looking at right now is just the consideration of whether we want to consider this. I mean, it's not the final decision. Do we want to integrate this into our utility? And I'm looking for other counselors too. I want to hear from everybody here. Counselor Thompson?
Would it, through you, Mayor, if we do it based on usage, does that not give us the foundation for us to adequately then reduce, like have that foundation to be able to incentivize reduction later for long-term rental, as we discussed? I just want to make sure I'm following that. Like, by doing this on a usage, that would give us the bedrock knowledge of information to be able to then create a correct formula in order to give a reduction or motivation or incentive to long-term rent. I just want to make sure I'm following that. The per usage is what's going to be based on usage rather than a blanket household. I just want to make sure that I'm following that correctly, that we would need that essentially to then know how to incentivize long-term rent to have that as a potential reduction. Am I correct?
I'm not
Go
sure I'm
ahead. Yeah,
following,
I'm
but
not-
what I
I'm not
can
following.
speak to is from a sanitary sewer point of view, the long-term goal for me would be to have it similar to water, where we have a flat base rate just to capture, a fixed portion of the billing because we have, costs, and then to have a volumetric portion that would fluctuate and so for people who use more sewer services, they would pay more, and then there would be a cap, a base rate that we have a fixed portion. And so that's the ideal, and that's in the long term, but we can't turn that around quickly, and just figure the timing of the situation in housing, I thought I'll bring this to you guys right now, as opposed to waiting a couple more years before we can actually get that volumetric one in.
Yeah, that makes more sense. That's how it works right now for water. There's not, like, if you've got a couple units, there aren't two water rates. There's one volumetric water rate for the entire property. And that's just sewage would be the same, is my understanding. Councillor Lumley. Did you put up your hand? Sorry. Okay. He went like this, so then put it down. Okay. Anyone else we did hear your thoughts on it. Is there something in addition? Okay, Councillor DeAndrade.
Thank you.
I'd like to hear everybody else, so too.
Yeah, I just want to have a sense, because the report talks about long-term, but if this is council priority, my question is, would we be able to look at this and this will be ready for the following year? Is it possible? To look at the sanitary sewer, like volumetric component, the same way we charge water, and even another rate for the garbage.
We're looking at moving towards volumetric either way, right?
Yes, we've reached out to our software, so it's going to take some software work, programming, then analysis of the rate structure, trying to get the rate structure right to get it more close as we can fair. It's also dependent on the water meter readings, and so I also want, right now we read every 3 months and bill every 6. And so looking ahead to if that structure would change at all. And it would be challenging to get it done, I think, within the year, given that there's going to be a new director next year, so it would be a capacity issue. But potentially 2 years out, I could see. We are looking at I'm waiting to hear back from the software people to say, if we were doing this from their end, how much lead time do they need and how much would it cost, so we can build that in. Yeah. But we're finally reaching the stage where we may actually be able to do this, so.
Okay, so far, what I'm hearing is strong opposition from Councillor DeAndrade that we do this year because of the increase, the overall increase it would have, and nothing from anyone else. So, okay, Councillor Lumley.
Yeah, thank you. My point is that I don't think I'm too concerned about the increase, only because if it is by a per unit, and if someone's not using the unit, it only provides more incentive for them to actually have a long-term rent. If it's housing that we're looking for, I mean, it's just going to incentivize them to potentially rent out a place or not rent out a place. That's how I would look at it. So.
It's a rebalance, really. It's the same number overall. Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, I would agree that moving towards that is the incentivization we need. So yeah, agreed.
Councillor Kroll. I see. Sorry, I have heard from you on this.
The entire purpose of the exercise was to try and come up with means of incentivizing long-term rental housing, and I think this is a step in the right direction. So, it's not going to be a quick fix, but I think if staff can, move us in that direction, the people who are using the services are going to pay for the services. It's a reality. The larger reality is, we have eradicated a huge component in our community of affordable long-term rental. And, anything we can do to incentivize bringing that back, I'm all for. So I would certainly support the effort that staff have done in this direction.
Okay, so I'm hearing some interest from the majority of council, and I agree. But go ahead, Councillor DeAndrade.
Thank you, Mayor. I think I need to clarify, because when I read the report, I saw two options. One, increase a flat rate. So moving forward, secondary suites don't pay anything, and the burden will be distributed for principal residents. That's option one. That's what I understand. And when I did the calculations, it's $60 plus the 5% that will be increased anyways, will be an extra $100 at least around this in property bills. And then the second option is we look at in a process to charge volumetrically the sewage bill, which I think is the fair. And perhaps even look at another for the garbage collection as well. Like I saw some municipalities, they charge 50% for secondary suites. So I see two options that she proposed. And then I hear council saying, oh, yes, we are moving, yeah, we all supporting. So I don't understand. I support the second option, that it's the long term that we look at volumetric, but we don't increase property tax,
We heard
utility
you.
taxes.
I heard you. You've been
so
clear on that, yeah.
It is clear.
Yeah, yeah, and we all support volumetric too. This isn't a lack of support for volumetric. And I guess when I look at a 50% of garbage and organics, that would be like $12.50 of the increase. I don't know if it would be, a huge difference. Also,
Mayor, it's two, so it will be 25 plus 36 is 60. Plus, if you look at 5%, which every resident is gonna pay, it's gonna get to $100. Either we support, I think my understanding is either we support, the options I see here is, we support that only principal residents pay taxes, therefore, our utility taxes are gonna increase. Or we do the second option, which will take long-term, perhaps 2 years, and secondary suites will be paying, and everybody will be paying sewage by volumetric.
I hear you. I think the second option is really just a status quo, though, isn't it? I mean, it's where we're not making a choice of whether we're moving towards volumetric.
Yeah, so status
Either
quo
way.
would be continuing to charge flat rates for every
Yeah.
unit. Garbage gets us closer because we can tell the additional use because people will say, I need another garbage can, so that one gets us closer. Sewer definitely is the more challenging one because there's no way that we can tell if someone's using more sewer. And so the short-term so what I provided is, aside from status quo, a short-term option, which is basically, you're correct, we're shifting the burden to the single-family house. And the long-term option is, looking down the road, is volumetric. It's just, would council want, so another option is no change, don't choose the short-term option and wait for the long-term option, but it's a couple of years out, at least, depending on, the capacity here. I hope that makes sense.
So I don't think we have consensus here, so it might be good to pass a motion on this of recommendation. I don't have the wording coming to me. I've been trying to, do we have I feel like maybe the motion would be to integrate this approach into our 2024 utility rates, but I don't know what approach should we call it. I'm fishing through your report here to find.
To you, Mr. Mayor, so if council wanted to move that way, and I meant to write this up ahead of time, but I forgot, would be that something along the lines of that council, or that a flat, basically that, sorry, I'm just thinking out loud here. Basically want to drop the additional, that the rate structures be adjusted so there's no additional charges. Actually, that doesn't work either, sorry. Might be helpful if I think about it a bit longer as the meeting goes on, potentially. Sorry, unless you have something, trying to make it so it doesn't restrict it future.
We do have a proposed rate structure in front of us, so we could just call it the proposed rate structure, I guess. Is there something there? Okay.
Thank you, Corporate Officer. So under the sanitary sewer, one of the paragraphs I have is that the rate structure would be revised to apply one minimum charge per residential property, regardless of the number of accessory dwelling units on the property. And that would apply, that would work for sanitary sewer, and then for garbage, it's the same, it's one minimum charge per residential property, knowing that they have the option to buy.
This sounds really complicated. So I think it's in the report. I mean, so I think if we pass a motion to say that we, just asking staff to integrate the proposed rate structure into the 2024 utility billing. I mean, this is a proposed rate structure in front of us. It's understood. Does that work, Corporate Officer? Or do we need more detail?
Whether you need more detail, I'm going to look to the Director of Finance, but what I'm taking from what you just said is that the revised rate structure be incorporated into, and that's as far as I got,
2024 utility
2024 utilities
billing?
billings.
Well, we're not at the billing stage yet, but the, yeah.
Rate
Utility
structure.
20, okay.
So that the revised rate structure be integrated into the 2024 billing process, or utility billing process? Or something along-
Consideration. Let's call it consideration, because we haven't, we're just still moving steps. Does that work?
I have another suggestion.
Okay.
I'm not sure. That council directs staff to adjust the utility rate structure fee, and this would be for garbage and sanitary sewer, to apply one minimum charge per residential property, regardless of the number of accessory dwelling units.
Sure, that's more detailed. That works.
Yeah.
That's what's in the report.
Does anyone want to move that? Moved by Councillor Kroll, seconded by Councillor Thompson. Any discussion of the motion? Councillor DeAndrade?
So I just want to clarify, this option is saying the burden will be on the single residence. It's just clarification, because I saw a lot of discussion of support.
As it always is, yeah. We are taxpayers.
No, but secondary suites won't be charged.
They never are. It's always the property owner who's charged.
No, but there was two charge, right? If you have, okay, so if you have a principal residence and you have a secondary suite, there are two charge right now. One goes to the secondary suite, the other goes to the principal residence. And the proposal from the Director of Finance was that only a single rate go to,
Point of order, please. Yeah. We've gone through this 5 times. I think we should, yeah, anyway, point of order.
Mayor, I don't understand what I'm voting, and I don't know if council, it's clear, but I understand one thing from this report, and I need clarification. My understanding is
I
what
don't know
I'm
how
saying.
more we can clarify. We'll try one more time. Can you try asking what you don't understand again?
Okay, so I ask to the Director of Finance.
I think you have to vote on the point of order,
The
don't
current system
you?
now charge the principal residence and the secondary suite.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So right now, the owner of the property, if it's a single-family dwelling, gets one charge. If then another owner of a property has two suites, they get two charges.
Exactly. So the proposal.
Okay, now we're going to vote. Okay? Is there any other discussion? All those in favor of the motion? All those opposed? The motion carries. Do we have any more on this report? 4.2 is the 2023 operations budget 9-month review.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this is a forecast, and it's for operations only, and it's based on actuals of Q3, which is up until September. I provide this report the last couple of years with the proviso that a lot can happen in Q4, but I'm doing my best to project out to see where we're going to end up at year end. For general operations, it's our biggest fund. I'm projecting a slight deficit, about $50,000. Considering the size of that fund, it's pretty and small in the overall scheme of things. Revenue and funding is projected to be over by about 1.2 million. There's two significant spots where that's happening. The biggest one is we have grants and donations that we collect on behalf of the Gibsons Public Market and flow through. As you might remember, they got a significant donation this year for the market, and that's why that's bumping up quite significantly. We do pass it right through those, so our expenses are up by the same amount. We also have increased interest income because the interest rates increased so dramatically over this year. And as well as we had some other donations and some fleet trade-in money that came that we weren't expecting. On the expenditure side for general operations, again, there's a over budget by about 1.2 million. And again, that's reflective of that additional flow through for the market donation. And we also had an increase to transfers to reserves, and that's again reflective of the additional interest income that we earned and some other items. So overall, although we haven't had a deficit for quite a while, and I was really hoping we wouldn't this year, but overall in the scheme of things, it's just over 0.5% of our budget. So I'm pretty happy with it as well, considering how many moving parts there are in the general fund. From the water fund, over on that one, looking at potentially a slight surplus of about $66,000. Revenue is really consistent with what was projected for the water fund. Expenses are going to be under roughly by about that amount. The two areas are administration, and that's due to an internal charge that we have, as well as some fiscal services, and that's due to reduced interest costs relating to the aquifer expansion. I have to basically budget out the full year's interest for the full amount, and because we didn't convert that debt, it's a bit smaller than what I was expecting, so that was helpful. From sewer operations, also a slight surplus, about $54,000. Funding or revenue is going to be about $128,000 below budget, but then the expenses are also going to be below budget by about $182,000, which is why we are getting a surplus. For that area, the expenses are under budget. It has to do with collections, reduced work in collections and flushing. And where I can, though, when we aren't able to conduct the work that we'd planned, I do transfer those funds to reserves to put them in and then bring it back out the future year, which I'll be doing for sewer this year as well. So again, I bring this to you just to give you some sense of how things are going. I'm pretty optimistic for the year, how it's going to end up. I'm really hoping general might actually sort itself out by the end of the year, which would be great. And I also really appreciate the efforts that staff and all the departments make. They're really great about their budgets, and their work helps us come and help me present these numbers like today. So thank you to them.
Thank you. Any questions on the report? Yeah, very, very thorough and important report. Now we're going to the form and character design review of Phase 2 apartment residential development of town-owned property at 571 Shaw Road.
Thank you, Mayor. Welcome.
I'll go to planning to give the introduction, and I'm going to step out a minute, so Councillor Kroll, can you chair?
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Yeah, we have the design team with us to share the development plans. This relates to the Phase 2 apartment building at 571 Shaw Road. You might have seen at the corner of O'Shea and Shaw, the Sunshine Coast Affordable Housing development that's already underway with Phase 1. And now we're looking to the second and final phase for that site, for that portion of the site, I should say. So I'll just quickly present sort of the context for council's decision, and then I'll turn it over to Peter to share the design plans with you. So this slide just shows the site at the intersection of O'Shea and Shaw, and shows sort of the location of Phase 1, which is under construction, Phase 2, and then finally the future use site is a portion of the lot. It's a town-owned lot that is zoned for a community use to be determined. But I was going to skip past this, but this is the site concept plan that was shared in 2019 at the time of the rezoning of the property. So some considerations that I touch on in the report to council are the decision being issuance of the development permit, whether we consider the form and character guidelines to be met and whether the permit should be issued as proposed or if there should be changes. In addition to that consideration, we're looking also at 2 bylaw relaxations within the development permit in order to facilitate better form and character on the site. And these include reduction of the required locker bicycle, sort of long-term bicycle stalls, adjustments to the accessible parking stall design to allow sharing of a loading space. And also, thirdly, the site-specific consideration of the development in relation to use on the future development site, the community use site. So firstly, the design guidelines are reviewed in relation to development permit area number 4, that's for multifamily development. Sorry. I've got a barrier in front of my seat. The purpose of DPA 4 is to ensure that a high standard of design, landscaping, and building form is implemented for any multi-unit residential development. Staff reviewed the form and character and provided comments on the Phase 2 development plans, and that's enclosed with the report as attachment D. Staff found that the guidelines are largely well addressed, with some question of whether the parking for Phase 2 is sufficiently recessed to provide a pedestrian focus to the site. The development plans were also shared with the advisory design panel on November 1st. The panel was unanimously in support of the building's form and character, and the ADP did provide comments and recommendations about the design of parking for bicycles and diverse mobility, namely replacing some of the proposed locker parking with additional scooter parking or mobility device parking and accessible vehicle parking. So the second consideration is this reduction. How do you address that? Well, the bylaw requires 95 bike locker spaces to be provided in the plans. Staff noted concerns about the size and visual impact of the storage lockers within the courtyard as originally presented. That's shown in the image here. It's not the landscape plan, so it looks a bit barren, but it shows the extent of the 2 bike lockers, and recommended that this be reduced. The applicants provided a letter to the town noting that they also didn't expect the capacity to be needed, given for reasons including that the population targeted for these housing units includes a number of people with mobility challenges, seniors, and so less bicycle ownership is anticipated. Further, they noted a review of bike storage usage in similar projects, and that experience shows residents are more likely to store valuable items like bicycles within their units or on balconies, despite the locker units being available. So this is a comparison of the site plan on the left, showing the originally proposed bike parking, and on the right, shows the bike parking as adjusted following input from the advisory design panel to include more accessible parking. Staff supports this relaxation with the trade-offs noted in the report options for council. So finally, in terms of use of land, the development permit application includes a request to reduce, I'm sorry, that's older. This is showing the two zonings of the property, being the side of the site shown in orange is that designated for the affordable housing project, and the site shown in blue is for the future community use, and Peter will touch on that in his presentation following. So in summary, the options provided to council in the report, along with pros and cons, are first, to approve the development permit as proposed. That would include the adjustments to the parking requirements. Option 2, approve the development permit subject to moving the building closer to the courtyard to provide a minimum 5-meter spatial separation and landscape buffer between the building and the boundary of the other portion of the zone. I should clarify that that is because the building is located right at the divide between the 2 properties, and so any buffers that are required by building code or just to provide privacy for the residents would be pushing onto the future development site. Option 3, and I've noted that that would likely require some parking to be relocated to provide the buffer on the site, or as the designer might find a solution. Option 3 is to authorize the development permit as proposed, but require that the locked bicycle parking be provided in accordance with the zoning bylaw with 2 lockers. So thank you. I will turn it over to Peter, and I hope I didn't take too much of your time.
Thank you. Do I use this remote?
Yes, sorry, I'll let Tracy set you up.
Okay, thank you, everyone. And I thought I would just take you through the sort of iteration of this plan based on feedback from the ADP and planning staff. So a couple of things happened when we put in our initial application. There was sort of a pre-application meeting with planning where they had some time to look at it and gave us some feedback, primarily about sort of building location and definitely about colors. And then it went to the ADP where there were concerns about accessible parking, trying to increase the amount of accessible parking, and looking at providing some secure storage for scooters. So if we look at this overall planning for both phases, the green is showing what's currently under construction. So we have phase 1, which is 40 units. The green shows the parking provided for phase 1, and you can see the interior courtyard. So to the left, you'll see that green parking, and that whole internal area there is a courtyard for both phases, essentially. It has a kid's playground, it has vegetable plots, and green space for the development. And the way the buildings were set up is the narrow part of the building is where there are one-sided units, so they're not looking into the parking areas. And where the building gets wider, there are a double-loaded corridor. So those, in that case, the units look into the courtyard and out towards O'Shea or Shaw Road. And then in the other building, the ground floor is now more common space for the facility, for the buildings, and the units face primarily to the west. So this is just a blow up. You'll see the new building. This plan shows the sort of layout. You can see down by the lower part, the lower right, those are all common areas that will be used by the residents. There's a common meeting room, there's some office areas, there's a boardroom, but essentially to create this space on the ground floor that can be used by all residents and still keeping the courtyard in the center. You can see the dotted line to the left. That's essentially, it's not a property line, but it's where the two various zonings occur. So you can see we're back a little bit from that phase boundary. But as Kirsten was saying, there was some concern about any future development. And our idea at this point is to keep the plan as it is, to keep the parking rather than put all the parking on the left side of that new phase, where all the residents would essentially be looking at a parking lot. We'd rather have some sort of a buffer to the future development that keeps that landscape buffer, and the residents are looking more into that area than into parking. This is the landscape plan. You can see how the bike parking has now been reduced to just 1. So there's 40 bike parking in there for a total of 76 units. This is the floor plan of the new phase 2 building. You can see as you enter the lobby, there's a common room that residents can use. There's an office area. There's the Affordable Housing Board can have an office. There's a boardroom. Then there's a multi-purpose room as well that can be used by residents of the development. As you come into the right, there's also a secure scooter parking. So again, because there's a target for people with mobility issues and seniors in this development, that's why we thought there'd be a need for less parking for bicycles. So this essentially is a secure scooter parking at the main entrance. This is the current building under construction. So this is planned to be occupied this coming summer. They're well along on that. They're starting siding and interior drywall is underway. So the phase one colors were these sort of more muted earth tones. And we've decided to sort of keep some of the main elements like the trim around the windows the same color, but go to a kind of bolder palette of blues and a cedar look for the base. So these are just a couple of images showing from the courtyard, the lower area to the bottom left there. That will be a wood grain cedar. And those are the common areas. So they're at the ground floor at the parking level. Just a couple more images of the plan. So you can see again to the bottom left, those are common areas. There's a common meeting room, a multi-purpose room that opens out into the green space. Just another image showing those one-sided units. So those balconies, those walkways are actually the entrances into the unit. They face the other side of the property. And that's with the, still as Kirsten was showing, with the additional bike storage building shown in there. So as I was saying, that's the phase one boundary. So I know there was a concern about any future development that happens on that side of the property. How close would they be to that, that new phase there? And so if we look at sort of two things, one is the building code. So in order for one building to face another building for fire codes, there's this calculation called limiting distance. So 5 meters away is what we would be able to have a property line. So in essence, if there was a property line 5 meters away, which is about 16 feet, you would be able to have all the windows we have on this property line. Obviously, another building that gets built on this other side of the property would also have to calculate their windows, but that would be one way of keeping the buildings further apart. So we're recommending some sort of a buffer between this phase line, basically, and the other side of development so that no other building would be closer than 15 meters, which is about 50 feet away from this building. So that would be something incorporated. If the decision was made that you want the building moved so that you can put another building right up to that phase line, we would essentially have to take that drive aisle with all the blue parking and move it to the west side of the building. So that's the end of my little introduction there, and happy to answer any questions. Andy Broderick is here from New Commons, who are the development managers.
Yeah, and agent at the moment for Sunshine Coast Affordable Housing and was involved in phase one, and happy to take any questions on the affordability. And we're quite excited. And we've been, this has been a town project, or we felt like it has been since the very beginning, and appreciate the support and really, are looking forward to the efficiency of using this mirror design, hoping, we'll be able to bring in, when prices are going up 10, 15% a year, hoping we'll be able to bring in actually a much better rate with the same engineering and development team and the same basic design, so.
I see.
Thank you, Mayor. It's a beautiful design and so many considerations there for shared space and, accessibility. And I think the ADP did a great job. But one question I have is the landscape plan that was brought up in our report as it relates, particularly on the west side, that's referenced for fire and deadfall. Can you speak to that?
Let me just get back to it. You're referencing the west side of the building, the existing building?
Right, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so what would happen is during construction, they would have to have a buffer anyway. So probably 6 to 7 meters, which is about 20 feet, they would have a construction buffer. So the trees would be taken away from there. And then I think we would have someone from Fire Smart go in there and look at what's existing there, clear out all of that underbrush within a certain distance, and certainly make recommendations of any trees that need to be taken down or cleared in that area.
So how much of a space would that be from that build line then? Can you tell me that?
From
In the back of the building.
From the back of the building, it would be about 20 feet. Yeah. I think you'd probably also get an arborist in there to see if there are any trees that would be in danger of falling, just in general, because of clearing there. But I think we'd try and find something where residents are, not looking into this empty space, but certainly the Fire Smart is something to think about.
So that would be about 15 feet onto the other property?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So we're about 5 meters now, so it would be cleared, another 15 feet onto that property, or onto that zone.
Okay, other questions? Councillor DeAndrade?
Thank you. Do you have a detail of the parking, the bike parking?
Which?
A more detailed image of the bike parking? Because I don't know if I missed, but I didn't see. And the reason I just want to understand, because from the design, I see like an open space. Is it protected?
It has columns and a roof and a chain link fence around it. So it has a
Secured, yeah.
secured bike parking.
Key lock. And
Okay, but there's no really walls around or anything like that. It's not like really
the
contained.
roof comes down, it's a
Yeah.
good roof and overhang, but it's open air.
You can see there's the image just to the
Yeah,
left
okay,
behind
yeah.
the pickup truck. So it's basically a full covered roof
Okay.
and secure door access into there, but open. Basically, the wind can blow through there to dry bikes out and things, but and a chain link fence around it.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Okay, I mean, I think the kind of main identified concern is where the building is up against the property line, and I appreciate Andy and Peter addressing that here and your position on it. I mean, in some ways, it's kind of relative because it's not like a private piece of property. It's our property that somebody will hopefully, some public agency will hopefully build on at some point with that restraint, and can probably work around it. I mean, I'm interested, Peter, what do you think a workaround might be? What would you envision in that spot?
You mean
if you were somebody building some
far as
other
use?
building, yeah.
Well, I think if I was doing something on that other piece of property, I would certainly respect that sort of a buffer anyway. And building code-wise, you have to, when you're building near another building, you have to actually look at what percentage of windows you have on your building as opposed to that building, and you find that balance. But I would certainly, if I was doing anything on that property, not be closer than that to that.
Yeah, but in terms of use, there's parking could be used, drive access, it doesn't have to stay, completely empty. It could be used for other site needs for that new facility or structure. Yeah, and the main access, I think, will be, it doesn't show the gray going, but we're actually putting putting the road through so that, yeah, it will connect through there. So you could imagine, an access point going up and over.
Any other questions? Okay. Well, thank you for your participation here. We do have some options to look at for recommendations here. Council. Councillor Kroll's most familiar with this and ADP experience.
Thank you, Mayor White. I was going to move option 1.
Is that a second? Seconded by Councillor Lumley. Any discussion of the motion? Councillor DeAndrade?
Yes, Mayor. I appreciate the letter regarding parking, which I understand current trends, but there's a huge incentive for active transportation. So I'm looking at least in the near future. And, this building is promised to last at least 70 years, I would think. So my concern is, I understand the math, there's 76 units, 16 are accessible. So we are assuming that the accessible, they would have other needs. And I appreciate the new design with the needs for wheelchairs and so on. But my concern is, so you're left with 60 units, but you're providing only 40. So I'm okay with reducing the current legislation, the current bylaw is 1.2 for biking, but I'm concerned to reducing way more than, so this is less than 1. So my thought is it possible to build a parking lot with a foundation that in the future, if there's a need to do a second floor or some sort of storage or higher storage with, there's
We are debating the motion now, not asking questions. So the motion is option 1, whether we support it or not.
Yes, but how do I know? I would just to understand if it's possible, right, to...
Okay, I'll look to other councillors in this debate on the motion. Are there further points?
So if we don't, okay, so if we don't discuss now, we have to say yes to the motion as it is.
We've got a motion on the table we're considering right now.
Yes. So
Option 1.
So I'm proposing, well, before I propose perhaps an amendment, I want to better understand if there's a possibility from the design point of view to have a flexible parking space that in the future needs, if you need more.
Okay, we had
Parking.
ample time to ask questions, and now we ask questions for the reports. Then we move on to the motion. And right now, we're considering the motion of option 1.
Okay.
Does anyone else want to speak to the motion? All those in favor? Opposed? The motion carries. Now we're at item 4.4, which is an OCP and zoning amendment for a 15-unit industrial development at Lot 14 Venture Way.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Are we all good?
Go ahead.
Okay, so Lot 14 is a vacant parcel. It's located at the corner of Venture Way behind A&W, and it's across the road from the Butcher and the new Live Work development that's at 1000 and 1006 Venture Way. You can see the parcel here in the blue outline. The town has received a proposal, as you can see in the site plan on the right-hand side, which is to build 2 buildings with 15 two-story industrial units in there. So staff have reviewed the proposal, and an OCP and a zoning amendment is required. Form and character of the proposal is also required, but that would be assessed at a later date. So we're looking just at the land use for now. These images show the parcel outlined in blue. Looking at the image on the left-hand side, this is the OCP designation, and it shows you that there's a north-south split. We've got Service Commercial Business Center, which is the dark purple, to the north, and then we have Mixed-Use Commercial, which is the red, to the south. Now, the staff report outlines the intent of these designations in more detail, but briefly, Service Commercial Business Center is looking at industrial uses, while mixed-use commercial is envisioning commercial at grade with residential apartments above. Now, when we look at the right-hand image, we have the zoning bylaw, and the property is zoned I1 in the northwest corner, and then R3 for the remainder. When we look at these images side by side, we can see that that R3 zone, which allows for one single-family dwelling or one duplex home, is significantly deviates from the OCP vision. So in order for the proposal for this development to go ahead, the OCP needs to be amended as well as the zoning bylaw. So for the OCP amendment, the Service Commercial Business Center land use would need to be extended to the entire site. And then Schedule E, which is the map that designates form and character development permits for the town, would also need to be changed to correlate with this change. And that map currently shows DPA 6 to the north and DPA 3, which is the Upper Gibsons commercial area, to the south. So we would change the Schedule E to have DPA 6 for the entire parcel. Now, a draft bylaw for the OCP amendment is available to look at in attachment B. Now, the zoning bylaw would also need to be amended, and this would remove the R3 zone from the parcel, and then the I1 zone, which is the light industrial zone, would be expanded to the whole site. And a draft of that zoning bylaw amendment is also available as attachment C. Now, the staff report provides 4 options for consideration, and they're in pages 12 to 14 of the staff report. And we also provide some analysis for each option for your consideration. Now, today we're specifically looking at the land use for Lot 14, as both the OCP and zoning amendments are looking at increasing the industrial land in the town of Gibsons. Now, if Council wished to move forward with these land use changes, the design of the development would be assessed under DPA 6, and that application would be referred to the advisory design panel for comment at a later date. And then a separate staff report would come back to Council for consideration. Now, we do have Harley Hagedorn here, who's the applicant and the owner of the property, and he's available for questions, and he can also do a quick introduction about himself and the development too, if you'd like.
Good afternoon, Mayor White, councillors, and staff. My name is Harley, and we've been working on this ideas on this property for quite some time. It has some challenges. With the shape of the property, there's a radius. There's also an elevation issue there from top to bottom. We came up with this idea with some of our research we've done in the town here regarding uses that are needed. And this is the light industrial idea that we came up and we wish to move forward with. And I'm here to answer any questions. The architect cannot be here today on short notice, but I'll do my best to answer anybody's questions.
Yeah, I think it's awesome. My one question, I guess, right off, like my immediate question is all the access from Industrial Way around the round, like you say, it's circular. Will all the access be? There won't be any access to Gibsons Way at all, right?
That's correct. To the south of the property, of course, is the A&W. There is a laneway that that we're not quite sure what's going to happen there, what the use is going to be for that laneway. It's not our property. So there'll be an entrance on the top and the entrance on the east side there to get into. So there'll be two different elevations to buildings.
Thank you, Mayor White. I understand at one point you were sort of considering a live-work option for this site as well?
We were, David, we spent quite a bit of time on that. And we were having trouble with the pro formas working out on that type of thing. We had some 6-level ideas, 6-story levels with underground parking. That turned out to be a lot larger nut than we're willing to take on, unfortunately.
Thank you.
Councillor Thompson.
It's a beautiful looking building. You mentioned research that you've done on, and if you could speak more to that, just regarding what you came up with as far as needs within the community for light industrial.
Yeah, the feasibility study we came back with, of course, are market condos, rentals, and light industrial. Those were the 3 that came back from the study that was needed in town here. So we had Colliers do a fair bit of work on that.
Anyone else? Any questions? Okay. I wanted to ask, I know one piece that would need to be reconciled is, in the OCP, it talks about having, envisioning this kind of vibrant commercial area there. So I'm interested in, what kind of businesses do you envision being in these?
That's a great question. Warehouse distribution would be the top one. Retail, recreational, gym, like a gym, climbing walls, things like that. Did you have that? Do you have that other picture? The interior picture kind of gives you an idea of what. It could be used as a production facility. Yeah, there's many uses for these. There's a couple of developments, similar developments in Squamish ongoing right now. That's all right.
I'll move option 1. I think the town has lost equivalent land in the past for light industrial use. I think it's important to have light industry in town. And I think the project, is well designed, so I'll support, I move option 1.
Are you moving option
1,
option 1?
yes.
Seconder by Councillor Kroll. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor of the motion? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay. So our next meeting of our Committee of the Whole will be on January 23rd, 2024 at 3 p.m. And our next meeting as a council will be a special meeting after, how long of a break do we need for tech? And 5 minutes? Does anyone want longer? 5's good? Okay, 5 minute break, and then we'll, I do need a motion to adjourn though. Moved by Councillor Kroll, Seconded by Counselor Thompson. All those in favor? The motion carries.